What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Cinephile Diaries. My name is Caleb. This is episode 23, and this is going to be an interesting episode because I honestly have no idea how it's going to go. It could be 20 minutes, it could be an hour. Because I watched four movies. I've very traditional, very, very, not quite what last week was. This is four movies, all of them really interesting, all of them wildly different from each other because if the show's ever consistent, I'm not hosting it. Um, and yeah, as you can see, slightly new crib. That's kind of whatever it is. Um, yeah, let's I don't know what I have to say. We're gonna do a roundup. I don't think we're gonna do a question of the week. Yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. So, in terms of the roundup, I just wanted to mention two things primarily. I am still very slowly working my way through Succession, and it's really good. It's really good. The thing I'm struck by the most, at least in the last couple episodes I watched, and I'm on episode 5 or 6 of season 1. I'm taking it very slow, and I think a part of that is the show is paced so well and they pack so much in every single episode because a lot of these prestige dramas I struggle with because they feel paced overly long. This doesn't have that. This is packed with fascinating character moments, humor, like a very specific type of humor. It's a it's a wildly entertaining show, and I don't know that I expected that. I don't know that I expected a prestige drama like this to be this wildly entertaining. Um, and I mean, you're watching genuinely awful people just kind of be genuinely awful for most of it. But I'm just fascinated by the dichotomy of this family that loves each other, but also all have incredible power and are all vying for that power in their own ways. It's a lot like Game of Thrones in certain ways. It's Game of Thrones without dragons. But it's just as interesting. Um, yeah. Succession is great. Succession is awesome. And if you haven't started it, because I hadn't started it, you should start it. Um, and then the other thing I want to talk about is Star Trek: Strange New Worlds season two. We're 2 episodes into Star Trek: Strange New Worlds season two. Um, and I'm kind of done. I'm kind of done with this show. I thought season one. I thought a third of season one was good. There was the episodes of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds that were Strange New Worlds, where they were going to interesting places, and you were doing a little bit of the allegorical stuff. You were having fun adventures of the week. Um, and then there was some episodes where they were more action heavy, and I don't really love those just because that's not really Star Trek to me. Um, like like I with Star Trek, I feel like you have to earn action because the point of Star Trek is this idealist utopia of discovery and curiosity. So if you're going to do action, I feel like you have to earn it, and I don't think season one really earned it when it did it. And then there's a couple of episodes in season one that I just kind of thought were dumb. With season two, episode one doesn't have Pike or number one in it, so you're already missing two of the most interesting characters on the show. Um, and then the episode itself is just they go to a planet that's suspiciously very Earth-like, and it's a planet at war, and it's very political espionage and spy thriller, and that's just not what I come to Star Trek for. And then episode two is a courtroom drama with I think there's one alien in the entire episode. I put out a tweet that was Star Trek Strange New World season 2 is suspiciously lacking in Strange New Worlds. And I'm kind of done with it. I'm kind of over it. Um I don't I don't know. I don't it was a show that had such promise. Because when season one was great. It's a show that had such promise, but just kind of become it's just kind of become another modern Trek show, and I'm kind of done with it. Um, yeah, that's my take on Strange New Worlds season two so far. I'm probably gonna keep watching, but I don't know if I'll talk about it again. But if it turns around or if something interesting happens, I'll probably talk about it again. Also, Unicorn Warriors Eternal is still really good. There's one more episode. The last episode of the season is this week, and that show's still really good. Um, yeah, that's my take on that. Let's go ahead and jump into the actual movies. Okay, so the first movie that I watched this week is the one that I said I was going to watch at the end of last week's video. Elemental. I finally saw Elemental. And before I jump into Elemental, I do want to mention the short. I do want to mention Carl's Date. I think that's what it's called. Um, I thought it was a really really nice. I believe it was still Ed Asner doing the voice because Ed Asner passed away recently, but not super recently. I think it's been about a year, maybe more. But I think it was still Ed Asner doing the voice, and I really really liked the short. Like the short itself almost made me cry. I thought it was a really really nice send off to. Obviously, Up was never intended to be a franchise, but Up kind of sets up this guy who loses his wife and then spends the entire movie grieving that and not wanting to let her go. And then I haven't watched all the shorts, but like this was a nice kind of epilogue to that letting go of him actually making the decision to like live a life again. And the way that he kind of interacts with Ellie. She's not in it, like the way he kind of interacts with Ellie's memories, I thought was really sweet. And I loved Doug and Doug's advice. I wish Russell was in it since it's like the end of the franchise. I do wish Russell was in it, but other than that, I thought the short was really good. But the movie Elemental. So there's this weird like online. I don't know if hate is the right word, but people don't seem to be loving Pixar these days. For some reason, Pixar has just become more polarizing lately. I think most people enjoyed Soul, but people think Onward is lesser Pixar. People think um, Luca is like lesser Pixar. People think obvious like there was a whole lot of very weird controversy around Turning Red. And then Lightyear is people think Lightyear is lesser Pixar. The only one of those that I actually agree with is Lightyear. I don't really like Lightyear that much. But I I thought Onward was awesome. I thought Onward was great. I thought that I thought Soul was really good. I thought Soul was a really really good movie with a great idea and just a great it was the first time watching Pixar that like it felt not quite geared towards kids, and I found that extremely interesting. Luca, I think, is just wonderful and incredibly charming. Turning Red was in my top 10 of last year. I think that movie's absolutely brilliant. I think it's incredible. Um, and so once again, we kind of come to this conversation around Elemental where most people are really enjoying it, but there's a lot of it's lesser Pixar. I think it has like a 70 or 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not quite what Pixar is used to. Yeah. So what did I think of Elemental? I loved it. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. Um, I really really loved it because, and we'll get into this more when I get into the negatives. But the movie's there's so much going on in the movie, and so much of it worked, and so much of it felt very like geared towards me in a certain way. So much of it, like, I talk a lot on this show about text to self-reflection. There's a lot of that in this movie for me. So I really, really loved it. Um, the highlight of the movie for me, and this is not the highlight of the movie for most people from what I've heard, but the highlight of the movie for me is the character of Wade, the water character. Um, I talked about with Ted Lasso how like Ted is like aspirational to me. Ted is an inspiration to me as like a man and who I want to be in life. Wade is also that. Wade is just a character who is so in awe and in love with the world around him, and he searches for the best in people, and he tries to bring out the best in people, and he tries to push people to be better. And he's not perfect. He's got his problems, but he's mastered this art of connection, and that is incredibly aspirational to me. That's incredibly important to me. That idea of being able to connect with people, and Wade does it incredibly well. Um, the second thing is Ember. I don't know that I loved Ember as I mean I did love Ember as a character, but the thing I connected to with Ember was actually just her story. Um, Minor spoilers. It's kind of similar to Turning Red in that it's an immigrant story, and a lot of that story is about the pressure of living up to your parents' legacy, and the pressure of being who your parents think you should be or want you to be. Um, there's a lot of that in Elemental, and she has this line. This is minor spoilers. She has a line where she says, like, when your parents have sacrificed everything, the only way to truly repay them is to sacrifice yourself. And I literally felt the theater like drop. There was an audible gasp in the theater. I think it's like a that's I think that line is like a top 10 line of the decade so far. Like I loved that line. I love so much about this movie. The animation is obviously gorgeous. It's Pixar. It's not quite like it's not into the spider. It's not across the Spider Verse because it's not trying to be across the Spider Verse. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel or push animation. It's just executing what we know incredibly well. It's just executing animation. It's doing what Pixar has always done, which is push the ball a little bit further. It's not quite Spider Verse where they push it like 100 yards, but it is pushing the ball a little bit farther. And there's great the way the water looks is incredible, the way the fire looks is incredible, the way they visualize Ember's emotions is really, really cool, and I found it really, really interesting, and I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it. Um, but yeah, so I loved the immigrant story. I loved Wade as a character, and I loved the way that Wade. I don't know how to explain it, but I loved what Wade did for Ember. I loved what their connection was. Um, and the one thing I will say is this is a movie where I think there are very clear flaws, um, but the flaws are very much overshadowed by how good everything else is. I think there's a lot of exposition in this movie, and a lot of the time the movie will just do a flashback scene to explain the exposition. So there's like three different things from the past that the movie's trying to pay off, and I felt like there was too much. Like you could just pick one, um, and just pay that off. And I thought some of the exposition was really clunky, where it will just be characters telling you plot details or telling you the way the city works. And the movie's very like detail oriented. It spends a lot of time, and I loved this. Like I loved what this said about about like systematic oppression. I loved what it was doing. But there's a lot in this movie about like zoning and permits and city infrastructure. And so a lot of that the movie just kind of explains, and I thought that was a little bit too much. And once again, there's a lot packed into the movie. But other than that, like I think that those are clear flaws, and I think they're not small issues, but they feel small compared to how strong the emotional weight is. I will say, like they don't do a lot um to explore what Ember does for Wade. They don't do a lot to explore that, but I think they do enough that it's still interesting and nice. Um, but yeah, that's I love this movie so much. It's my third favorite film of the year. Um, I think it's pretty wonderful, and you should see it. Yeah, that's my take on Elementals. Especially go see it because it's not doing incredibly well at the box office, which is I don't. That's the thing is I don't really understand why what the deal is with Pixar right now. I don't really understand why people aren't responding. Yeah, it's just maybe because the stories are a little bit more niche and they've focused a lot on like immigrant experiences and soul with the African American with the black experience. Maybe that's why. But I like I'm shocked by the amount of like if Pixar is extending an invitation for you to look in in these other cultures and these other worlds, I'm shocked by the amount of people not accepting that invitation. I don't know. It's very strange to me. I would be curious to know what you think about what Pixar's problem is down below. Maybe you just don't think the movies are very good, which is fair. Maybe I'm just gullible. But yeah, that's my take on Soul. It's incredible. I loved it so much. You should go watch it. Um, this is going to be fun because we got to jump to a completely opposite end of the spectrum. This is going to be fun. Movie number two, like I said, jumping to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Um, movie number two is a movie called Sanctuary. This is a new release, and I'm gonna tell you as little as humanly possible about Sanctuary because I think I knew too much going in. I'm gonna tell you a one word kind of a one word summary, I guess, a one word log line, I guess, one line, a one line log line, a one sentence little. Basically, Sanctuary is about a rich guy trying to break up with his dominatrix. And this might be my favorite movie of the year. Like I have it at number one right now, and my top three are kind of all interchangeable. Um, I think I have Elemental at three. Maybe I have it at four. No, yeah, I have it at four because John Wick. John Wick, Spider Verse, Sanctuary. Um, the thing with Sanctuary is it's not like pushing the envelope. It's not like John Wick 4 and Spider Verse are both pushing the envelope in a certain way. Sanctuary is not pushing the envelope. I think the thing that the thing that I fell in love with about Sanctuary is just how surprising the tone is. Sanctuary is a psychosexual drama um, that like does that very well. It makes you think. It's very psychological. It's also a very sexy movie. It's a very attractive movie. um, but the thing that I was shocked by is how funny this movie is because it's listed as a comedy on Apple TV, and I was like that doesn't sound right. That like it's like on HBO when Banshees of Inisherin came out, they had that under comedy, and they had it like in lists dedicated to comedies. Banshees of Inisherin is not that funny. Like it is funny, but it's not that funny. Sanctuary is almost a rom com. It's almost a rom com, especially like I don't want to. Sanctuary is almost a rom com. Um, like I was genuinely shocked. And it comes down because the movie's a chamber piece. The movie is these two characters over basically a night talking to each other, pretty much talking to each other. I mean that literally, like they literally are talking to each other. There's some other stuff that happens, but not as much as you would think given the premise. But it's these two characters in a room talking to each other, so all of the comedy comes down to these two performers, Christopher Abbott and Margaret Qualley. And they somehow manage to be incredibly funny. Christopher Abbott is just such a wonder, just such a fun performer to watch. And the way that he handles, because a lot of his humor comes in, I guess, surrender when he's kind of giving into Margaret Qualley's character. A lot of his humor comes in that, and there's a lot of that there. But he really, really manages to balance the the submissive side of this character. He really, really manages to balance the surrendering side with who's in the game, who's in the scene, playing the game. Because I mean, he's paying her for this. He's technically in charge. So like in the scene, committed to the scene, he does a really, really good job of balancing that with an angry side and a dominant side and a kind of prouder side, a taller side. He does a really, really good job with that. And he's really, really fun to watch. And there's so many layers to both of these performances, because the movie doesn't really tell you like it. I'm not going to say that because I don't want to spoil it, but the line becomes blurred at a certain point of whether or not this is a scene or it's a actual real conversation between two people, whether or not it's transactional, being paid for, or if it's an actual scene between two people having a conversation. So there's so many layers to each performance. I was thinking to myself, like, even just in the edit, it's like they filmed 3 movies. They filmed one where it's real, all of it's real. They filmed one where some of it's real, some of it's not. And then they filmed one where none of it was real. So they play with that in the edit, and it gives all of these layers to these performances that make them really, really interesting to watch. But the absolute standout of the movie, I think it's my favorite performance of the year so far, is Margaret Qualley. Margaret Qualley in this movie, as I think her name's Rebecca, is incredible. She's amazing. She's genuinely incredible. She manages to balance all of those layers. She manages to be terrifying, dominating, and incredibly funny sometimes in a single line. She will hit all 3 of those notes. It's fascinating to watch. She just, it's insane the balance that she hits of terrifying, funny, sexy, dominating. It's a magic trick of a performance. It's incredible. The movie's a chamber piece, so I was also shocked at like how well paced it is. That's another reason it's maybe my favorite movie of the year, is because Spider-Verse and John Wick are both over 2 hours. This movie is an hour and a half, and it feels not just that it's better paced than both of those, because both of those have incredible paces. Both of those don't feel like as long as they are. But this movie genuinely like feels like it's half an hour long. The pace is, because John Wick and Spider-Verse both have more tricks up their sleeve to make that pace. Like, Spider-Verse has action, John Wick has action. Sanctuary doesn't have any of that. Sanctuary has these 2 characters in a room talking for an hour and a half, and it feels like 20 minutes. It's insane to watch. And it's just such a wonderful, wonderful feels like a weird word, but it's such a fascinating look at like love. It's such a fascinating look at like how people love and how people empower love and how people empower express themselves and oppress themselves. And it's like also a great look in certain ways at like masculinity as a thing. It's a great look at like the the ways in which we will allow ourselves to self-reflect and in certain ways like therapize. Therapute sounds better. The ways in which we will allow ourselves to like heal from, to deal with our problems. I just Sanctuary is such a layered, thought-provoking, sexy, but also extremely funny and entertaining movie that like it's a magic trick. It might genuinely be my top three is kind of interchangeable. It might genuinely be my favorite movie of the year so far. Um, it's incredible. Margaret Qualley. We're about halfway through the year. I I don't know if I'm gonna like a performance of this for the rest of the year as much as I enjoyed Margaret Qualley. It's an incredible performance, and I love this movie so much. Like I'm shocked at how much I love this movie. Um, yeah, if you haven't seen Sanctuary, I absolutely recommend you check it out if you can handle the subject matter. Although there's not much of it, it's much more psychological. But if you can handle that subject matter, if you can handle the subject matter, um, I highly recommend Sanctuary because it's such a fun watch, and I really, really want to talk about the ending with someone. So go check it out, and we will see. Yeah, go check it out. Yeah, let's go ahead and jump into movie number three, which is the only movie that's not a new release. Here we go. Movie number three that I watched this week, Kiki's Delivery Service. I said I was gonna watch it because text to self. I was doing the thing this week. We're in a new space. Um, yeah, so I watched Kiki's Delivery Service. I've said it before. Miyazaki's my favorite filmmaker, and I think I'm starting to figure out what it is. I think I'm finally starting to figure out what it. I gave this movie 5 stars. I gave this movie 5 stars. I think this movie's incredible. I spent the last 20 minutes crying. It's Kiki's Delivery Service. It's Miyazaki. Obviously, I loved it. But I think I'm starting to figure out what it is. Miyazaki is just there's this thing that Miyazaki does that I haven't found anyone else doing. These movies are just kind. These movies are just inherently kind. The central conflicts are misunderstandings at best. I go back to something like Mononoke. I think Mononoke spends more time in Irontown with the bad guys, developing them and empathizing with them, than it does with Mononoke. I think I haven't. I need to rewatch it, but I think that's a fact. I think it spends more time in Irontown than it does with Mononoke. Miyazaki just inherently tells stories about kind people. There are people in Kiki's Delivery Service who are not kind. Specifically, there's a bunch of kids in this movie. There's this one little girl that I kind of want to punch in the face. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Um, but yeah, Miyazaki just tells stories that are inherently kind and inherently sweet and charming. Like there's just so much charm in Miyazaki. Um, the one observation I have about this movie that I developed is this movie's a lot like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, another movie I adore. Um, as in, like, you have a hero in a city, they're delivering things. There's a scene where they deliver things because there's a scene where Peter delivers pizza. Pizza time. You have a scene where people deliver things, and then they both lose their powers because they're sad, and then get a pep talk, get their powers back to go save the day. Um, yeah, I didn't notice that for some reason the first time, and it's actually kind of cool. Um, yeah, I don't have a wealth of things to say about Kiki's Delivery Service. I just love this movie. I love the charm. I love this is like definitely not Miyazaki's most action packed because Mononoke exists, and I feel like Castle in the Sky and Nausicaa are both also fairly action packed. Also, Howl's is pretty action packed, but there is a lot of action in Kiki's Delivery Service, and I really really like that. I also just love the character. This is the movie. The Kiki's Delivery Service is the movie that I think probably has. I don't know if it has the best female representation because I really love Sosuke's mother from Ponyo. I really love Mononoke. Um, but this movie has a lot of this movie's also kind of a story about women. This is a movie about like supportive women coming together to kind of because even like I love oh gosh I'm blanking on her name, but the old not the old lady but the old lady's roommate who like grabs Kiki's broom and it's like vroom, vroom, vroom. Just it's such a fun movie. It's such a great movie. There's so many little gags, and I don't know, like, because I watched them dubbed. I watched them. I know. I watched them dubbed, but because they have such great performers, like with Ponyo, Liam Neeson, awesome. And then with this movie, you've got like Kirsten Dunst in it, who's great. You've just got a lot of really really great performers. Batman as Howl, Christian Bale as Howl. Different movie, but yeah, but like I watched them dubbed, so I don't know if they like changed a bunch in the comedy, but Gigi has a lot of really really funny moments. There's some this is there's some like slightly more adult humor in this one that's really funny. And then I was gonna mention Ursula. Ursula is just a really really fun character. Ursula, like specifically the point I started like the point this movie started to get me was Ursula's speech about if you want to fly again, stop trying. And then she says all these things. I'm gonna print it out and I'm gonna put it somewhere in the house. Um, but Ursula is just a really really good character and a really really sweet character. Yeah, I love this movie. I love this movie. I love Miyazaki. I don't know what else to say. This is a really really fun movie. The action's really it has another great like moderately intense but kind of out of nowhere third act. Not as like the third act of My Neighbor Totoro is maybe the most intense third act of all time to me because of just how like the stakes go from like for the first like two-thirds of the movie there's like no plot. Just these two girls falling in love with a new town and running around and having a great childhood, and then like for half a second you think one of the girls has drowned. That movie goes from like 0 to 100 in like 2 seconds. But I love it. This movie doesn't quite do that, but it has this very like this is kind of Miyazaki's superhero movie. It has this very like superhero third act of her trying to save Tombo from the crashing dirigible. It's just I love Tombo. Like Tombo's an idiot at first, but I love Tombo. Um, and like I haven't like thought about it much, but there's such a fascinating dichotomy of or like thought of not dichotomy, but like that I this is a movie about generational divide. It's a movie about generational divides, and it's a movie about urbanization, which is, and I think the book is even more that. The book Kiki's Delivery Service, which I kind of also want to read, is even more that. Which is another really really interesting thing to think about. Yeah, the idea of urbanization. Um, just and I don't have anything interesting to say about it. It's just an interesting thought. Um, but yeah, Kiki's Delivery Service, one of my favorite animated movies of all time. Kiki is an incredible character. Gigi is amazing. Um, yeah, go watch Kiki's Delivery Service. We got one more movie to talk about, and then yeah, we will wrap this thing up. Okay, movie number four. The only movie I didn't quite love that I watched this week was No Hard Feelings, the new Jennifer Lawrence Raunch com. And and I say I didn't quite love it. I really enjoyed it. But I think a lot of the significant enjoyment comes from the charisma of Jennifer Lawrence and Andrew Barth Feldman. They're both just so good in this movie, and they like obviously they're both really funny, but they also bring like a certain amount of heart and likability to both characters, to characters that like otherwise probably wouldn't be that likable. Specifically the Jennifer Lawrence character. That's a character who's doing something that's pretty messy. She's doing something that's like not the best thing in the world, and but Jennifer Lawrence just brings a certain amount of likability to that performance that you don't immediately write off the movie. Like if the movie had ended poorly and like ended in like done a certain thing, then you might write off the movie then, but it doesn't do that. And because it's Jennifer Lawrence, I think she brings enough likability to the character that you at least want to see her succeed. And the movie does enough of a job of showing what she's facing and what her obstacles are to her goals. It does enough of a job of showcasing that you don't immediately hate her for the very strange thing that she's doing. And then Andrew Barth Feldman is just a character who's could I'm sure Andrew Barth Feldman has played Evan Hansen, but he's just this Evan. He's just like he's a character who could be extremely unlikable. Um, but once again, he manages to not do that. He manages to be really, really good and really, really funny. It's one of those characters who could either play really, really annoying and unlikable or really, really funny. And I think Andrew Barth Feldman does it in a really, really funny way. Um, there's also more like physical slapstick comedy in this movie than I was expecting. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. There's one scene on a beach that if you had told me a year ago I was going to get to see that in a theater, I would have told you were stupid. Like it's pretty out there and it's really really funny. If you're into like raunch physical humor, it's really really funny. And then there's a couple of other scenes that are also really really funny. But yeah, like I don't know. There's a couple of scenes in this movie where it felt like characters were undergoing massive changes in between cuts. Like the scene will happen immediately after the last scene, but a character's motivation will have completely shifted, and a character's loyalties will have completely shifted. So there's a lot of that, just like really really clunky script work. And then like the movie's not like the greatest thing in the world to begin with. The premise is obviously a little bit weird, and watching it sometimes it verges on like, I don't know. I don't know if you've earned that. Um, and then specifically when like you get to like the third act where there's some actual real conflict going on, I thought that got a little bit weird, a little bit like I don't know, something about it didn't work for me, and I don't really know what. Just a little bit like I don't know, yeah, just they made a certain decision, and like the movie still goes on. They don't justify that decision, but like if the movie had ended where that decision got made, which is kind of where I was afraid it was going to end, I would be rolling my eyes, but it doesn't. Like it keeps going, and you get a real resolution, and you get like a resolution for both characters. And I thought it worked well enough by the end. But overall, like I don't think it's the greatest movie in the world. Jennifer Lawrence is just a once in a generation talent who's incredible, and can kind of although I this felt like it was supposed to be Amy Schumer, and it just wasn't. Like I don't know why. But Jennifer Lawrence is a lot more likable than Amy Schumer, so I'm glad it was Jennifer Lawrence. And she just does a really really good job with some of the physical comedy that I was really surprised by. Yeah, so No Hard Feelings is not my favorite movie of the year or anything. I've already said that. I've said that once this week. I've said a movie is my favorite movie of the year once this week. No Hard Feelings is not it, but it is really good. There's a nice amount of heart to it, and it's got some great comedic elements. But there's not like a whole lot to say. It's got a really really kind of bad script, and some of the some of the relationships just don't fully work. But like it's good. It's like it's perfect. It's perfectly good. There's not like a standout moment, well, except for the beach scene. But there's not like nothing about it like super stands out or pops. But it is good. It is good. It is worth your time. And a lot of other people are liking it more than I did. So yeah, I would say go check it out. Form your own opinion. Yeah, that's my take on No Hard Feelings. Let's jump into the outro and then get on with our days. And with that, there you have it. That's my take on movies for the week. That's what I got. That's what I have for you this week. Um, Next week, who the hell knows what's going to happen this week? Who knows? I don't know. If I'm I'm gonna see Indy 5. I'm gonna see Indy 5 no matter what it takes. But other than that, I don't really have big aspirations movie wise for this week. So we might have, pretty short show next week. We'll see. But yeah, that's my take on movies for the week. Go ahead and jump down below, comment down what you thought of all the movies that I talked about. If you've seen them, I do recommend you see all four of them. They're all pretty great. Feel free to comment down below and let me know what your thoughts are, and we will see you in the next one. Bye bye.